Hindsight, I wouldn't have done the Megyn Kelly stuff. I felt like I was in a place again of like bearing the burden and the weight of just, even though you volunteer, it's like you feel obligated to like help.
And I had to make that choice to forgive him, you know. It wasn't something that somebody forced, like, oh, you need to do this, you know. It's like, you have to make that decision for yourself.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Thursday, June 8th, 2023. Yesterday, I talked with you a little bit about the Duggars. That's all I've been talking to you guys about. And we talked about Anna, who is, kicking out the toxic Jill because she doesn't like Jill and doesn't get along with Jill because Jill's the truth teller. And then we talked about how Jed and Katie want nothing to do with Jill. And then this morning, I got this text from someone connected to the Duggars who was so irate with Katie and Jed and the way that they're acting and how, like, the way that they're treating her just proves sort of what the documentary was saying about how they look and view at people that are harmed by other people in this group. The damage that is caused and inflicted has to be stuffed down and you can't talk about it. And if you do, you're gossiping and you're not being a good child, okay? And so Jill is getting a ton of heat on her Instagram, in her comments, everywhere. She's getting nailed left and right. She's also getting a lot of very good, positive feedback. I was impressed in this docuseries with her candor. I saw areas where it was clear she held back because she didn't want to talk about it. And I was impressed with Derek's patience with her, right? The comments that I'm seeing on her Instagram, I actually have had questions about myself, okay? Because there was this part in the series at the very end where they start talking about the Joshua generation. Now, the Joshua generation is part of this college, and it's this group of people that help and mobilize students to help campaigns. I learned that the Joshua generation was instrumental in Michelle Bachmann being elected in the county that I live in. I now live in a county that is literally the reddest state it's the reddest county in the state that I live in. Michelle Bachmann used to represent this area. And I'll just tell you something. It's not that hard for Republicans to get elected here, so it's not really saying a whole lot that she got elected. But they've helped get people elected, and they help on campaigns, and they basically do free labor. And they also try to get into the government. What the Joshua generation portion of the series I learned after learning about the Joshua generation in more detail is that, first off, the Joshua generation didn't actually come from the IBLP. It's sort of like on a parallel homeschooling side, not the IBLP. And that group might have had similar thoughts as the IBLP, but those people were not necessarily in the IBLP. Secondly, I also learned that a lot of the things that they were claiming of the Christian influencers that are the Joshua generation are not the Joshua generation. So the Joshua generation, their sole goal is to help elect Christians to promote Christian beliefs in the government. When I was watching this, they were talking about things happening in politics and things that are happening in our country today. They were talking about how Roe v. Wade was overturned and how there's these huge fights over gay marriage, and there's book bannings and book burnings going on all the time, and child labor arguments. And thinking about when they were talking about this, and I'm not trying to be political here, by the way, this is me being neutral, in that Derek and Jill actually believed the same things as what they were criticizing these groups for doing. And I wondered while it's an amazing platform to be able to speak out on, she's getting comments about how the beliefs that these people hold are being criticized in this documentary, and she's a part of that. So they're saying like it's ungodly, which is probably where Ginger's coming from. I keep wondering, like, Jill and Derek are pro-life and have spent so much time on their platforms advocating for and pushing pro-life, I'll say pro-life rhetoric. They're also anti-gay, right? So they say now that they're more accepting and they just agree to disagree on things. But Jill in a People magazine said that, you know, she would never be able to accept if her child was gay, and she would never be able to like condone them if they were in a gay relationship. Like, she wouldn't accept that about them. She would still love them, but not accept it. I don't know where she stands today, but the issues that the documentarians were making about Christians are the same beliefs that Derek and Jill hold. Because while Derek and Jill have become, you know, out of this sick cult, they're still very conservative. So I keep thinking, like, if you're Derek and Jill and you're seeing this feedback, I wonder if there's like, I'm so glad I spoke out. I told my truth, and that stuff has nothing to do with me. It's just in the series, and I'm going to separate myself from that. Or if they too are like a little bit offended by the fact that that's included. I'm not sure. You know, I would think that a lot of Christians would see that and think, oh, they're attacking my beliefs. Oh, they're attacking how I'm feeling. And again, I'm not a Christian, so I can't speak for them. I just thought that part was interesting. So I was looking through a lot of her comments, and I noticed a lot of them were unhappy with the way that the series viewed Christianity, they said, and the Joshua generation as of trying to overturn laws and put people in the Supreme Court to pass laws. Now, the laws that have been overturned were things that her family fought hard to have overturned. Like, the Duggar's platform has been fundamentally pro-life. And that's something that Jill and Derek are still happy about. So to me, it seems like, in a way, still, the documentarians are criticizing people that hold views like Jill and Derek. Because it wasn't just these radical people that were able to get the Roe v. Wade stuff overturned. You know, like, Christians are in politics, and that's just how it works. I mean, Mike Pence is a politician. That's just how it works. You know, if they're elected, they're duly elected, and they've won election. That's just what happens. So back to this, Jill's getting kicked on and like just destroyed by the people in her comments. I'll just read a couple to you. I don't want to spend a ton of time, just to give you an example so you know what I'm talking about. People in the comments are like asking her if she understands or if she's lost her faith. You know, I was listening to Morgan and Paul, and they were like basically questioning if Jill and Derek are Christians. And I'm like, of course they're Christians. So it's like, even the fact that they're in there has people wondering that like literally everyone in this documentary must not be a Christian if they're going to be a part of this. I don't know that everyone knew what the end was going to be or what it was going to look like. One person said this. So Jill posted this post on her Instagram that says, relationships and life journeys are sometimes complex. You can recognize the beauty in your story while still acknowledging the difficult parts. It's like roses and thorns, justice and grace. The two can coexist. They don't have to invalidate each other. The highs aren't automatically erased or invalidated by the lows. You can still love others, be grateful for, and recognize the happy parts in your story while calling out the harsh realities of other areas. So someone left this comment. I don't hear the roses or the happy parts in the documentary. I'm glad the horrible abuse that was brought to light, but it didn't seem balanced. It was more an overall bashing of Christian values instead of a specific look at the atrocities of the IBLP and Josh's crimes. I think the Joshua generation ad confused people. Regardless if that was their intention or not, it left Christians feeling attacked. Another person said, I feel like the documentary was really damaging to homeschoolers and the Christian community. Not all families are like that. Just because some believe that this or that doesn't make it a cult. However, I do believe the IBLP was a cult. I feel most of those in the interview portrayed Christians as bad. I think it's ironic that they assume that people speaking out against the IBLP are somehow non-Christians. Amy and Deanna are Christians. Derek and Jill are Christians. Jim Holt's a fake Christian. Bobby's a Christian. But I'm pretty confident that some of those women that we're talking are still Christians. I don't think all of them have fully deconstructed and are now atheists. One person in the comments explains why Jill's getting backlash. Yes, and perhaps your book will clarify your position. I think some of the pushback is because the documentary itself ended with an overall theme which attempted to link extremist teachings such as the IBLP with the larger, more mainstream evangelical movement in the US. And so people are left confused regarding your position. And how that relates to your previous statements in a YouTube videos, etc. I believe your focus was on your experience, and the documentary did a great service in uncovering the abuses with extremist systems. The story needs to be told, but because the documentary tried to link this to the current larger movements in political and educational systems, some people are left feeling wary about that, what that message was. I think the documentary really bit off a little bit more than it could chew. I think the documentary was good in the fact that it allowed the people that were harmed in this system to speak, okay? And it gave them a platform to share the trauma that they experienced in this culture. I think that it left a lot of dialogue where there wasn't a lot to finish the dialogue. So a content would get started, a topic would start, and then it would move on to the other. And I felt like there was holes in a lot of the different stories. So they would start talking about blanket training, and then they would talk about corporal punishment, and then domestic discipline came in, and then survivors are telling their stories, but then their stories are sort of left on a cliffhanger where you don't really know what the end goal was. You don't really know what happened. And it didn't talk about where they stand today and how they view faith. So some of them talked about deconstruction, others didn't say anything. And I think for some people, they want to know, okay, is this what you're against, Jill? Are you standing with these documentarians that are saying it's bad that all these things are happening in our government right now? You can't please everything, and she certainly cannot control how this direction went. And I don't know what they told her. I think it was pretty clear in the synopsis that it was going to be an overarching look at the system. I think that fourth episode was confusing, and I think that's my biggest criticism, is that the fourth episode left even me confused. I do think the IBLP did really bad things and did try to get into the corrupt side of things, but I think what they could have done, instead of saying they're trying to take over the world and trying to take over this, because that is the goal, but they could have focused primarily on the crimes and the criminal corruption within the system. And I said that in a video yesterday. So for Jill, she's getting a lot of pushback, and she's trying to respond in a way like, people are even saying like, oh, you don't love your parents. And she's like, no, I do love my parents. That's not what this is about. So for Jill, part of healing is to recognize that she grew up in a system that was extremely controlling, and that her father did things that were very harmful. She went through harmful experiences herself. Not all Christianity represents the IBLP. Not all Christians are extremists. Not all Christians are anti-gay and pro-life. You know, one of the former IBLP members contacted me yesterday or 2 days ago, and they were like, you know, what bothers me about this is that view at the end is really damaging for someone like me, because I'm a Christian, and it makes people seem like all Christians want these things. Like, that's how I felt. And it felt really damaging for Christians that are in politics that are not like the IBLP. So everyone's going to start to feel like, is that person IBLP? Is this person IBLP? Are they trying to take over the government? She felt like there was this level of like, it created a sense of panic that maybe didn't need to be there. Christian nationalism and Christian dominionism is a huge domestic problem, that so much so that, you know, the Department of Justice is working to combat that, the terrorism that comes as a result of that. But not all people that are Christians are doing bad things. So I think, and they don't all represent the same worldview. She also said, now people are going to think that I hate gay people, and I don't like that. Like, I'm not an anti-gay person. I'm accepting of all people, no matter who they are. I'm pro-choice. So I think it just depends on like where you're coming from. Like some Christians that are more conservative thought it was an attack on them and that they're trying to do things, and other Christians that were less conservative felt like they were getting lumped in with people that were extreme. You're never going to please everyone. I think if they would have kept other influencers out of that and not said this is the Joshua generation and confused it in that respect, I think people wouldn't have been left on that note. And I also think there's so much more they could have talked about instead of that. They didn't even go into the medical neglect or the, years of abuse of his brother, Steve, or Bill Gothard's, the girl that he was going to marry, or the number of times he tried to get married. Like, he did try to get married. They didn't really talk about what happened and all the crimes that have happened, all the people that have been arrested. There's been really big crimes associated with the IBLP. There was a guy that was in Connecticut, and he was part of this robbery, and they killed a family, and he grew up in the ATI. There are so many fathers that have been in prisons, sons. There was a guy that was big in the IBLP that was a musician that had CDs, and he was in prison for doing stuff like Josh did. There was a lot of angles they could have looked at with the amount of people arrested, and I think that would have been a more realistic take, as the amount of crimes and how the crimes are affecting things. Because again, to me, it's the criminal aspect and the damage they're causing to people that, to me, feels more of a threat than the political stuff. The political stuff is important, but again, I think if it wouldn't have had that aspect, I think Jill would be getting less backlash. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, Jill is going to have backlash, and as the Duggar family friend said to me today, was Jed Duggar needs to start looking in the mirror and asking himself, if what happened to Jill happened to me, would I be doing this? Would Jill do this to me? If Josh had done that to me? And what is Jed saying about the victims of the content that was in the content that Josh downloaded? That he's just gonna move on from them and let go because they wanted justice? What about all the people that have been hurt in the IBLP? We're just going to ignore them and move on because it doesn't serve him. There's a lot of things that he's not looking at, and he's not even recognizing that he has no room to judge what he doesn't know. And to say, I'm moving on from you because you've caused my life harm, because now I can't have this gifted life that I once thought I was going to have. You're telling victims of abuse that they don't matter, Jed. This family friend said, shame on you. You need to grow up. So that's all I have for now. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.